This right here is one of those moments that instantly makes your heart race. You are watching a plane take off, everything looks routine, and then suddenly something explodes. This is real danger unfolding in seconds.
Hello, everyone.
A plane roars down the runway, and just as it lifts, part of the engine fails violently. Burning pieces scatter across the ground, and you can almost feel the shock from the person recording. That's not all. Here's yet another crash. These crashes, and a lot of others, are not scenes from a movie. These are real aviation moments captured on camera. Let's get straight into some of the most unbelievable aviation moments ever caught on camera. Before we do, a quick pause. I'm doing a $100 Amazon gift card giveaway to celebrate when this channel hits 1,000 subscribers. No stress, no complicated steps. Once we reach that milestone, I'll randomly pick a winner. If you want to follow the journey or see who wins, feel free to subscribe. One of the most shocking incidents happened on March 29, 2026. An Airbus A330 was preparing for takeoff at a busy international airport in Brazil. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Passengers were seated, engines were running, and the aircraft began its takeoff roll with the usual steady acceleration that people have come to trust. A passenger sitting near the wing decided to record the moment, probably just to capture the excitement of departure and maybe share it later. But what they captured instead was something no traveler ever expects to see. As the aircraft gained speed and lifted off the ground, the left engine suddenly failed in a very dramatic and violent way. Flames burst out with force, and pieces of the engine broke apart almost instantly. Those fragments did not just disappear into the air. They fell onto the grassy area beside the runway, and some of them were still burning. You could see smoke rising and even a small fire starting on the ground as the debris scattered across the field. It was chaotic, and for a moment it looked like things could spiral out of control. Inside the cabin, passengers likely felt the vibration and heard the loud bang. Moments like that can be deeply unsettling, especially when you are thousands of feet in the air with no control over what is happening. But this is where training and experience come into play. The pilots stayed calm, focused, and professional. They followed emergency procedures step by step, communicating with air traffic control and making quick decisions. They chose to return to the airport immediately, which is often the safest option in such cases. Within minutes, the aircraft was lining up for an emergency landing. Firefighters and emergency crews were already in position, prepared for the worst, but hoping for the best. The plane touched down safely, and the situation was brought under control. Thankfully, everyone on board was okay. The flight was canceled, and passengers were later rebooked, but the important thing is that no lives were lost. This incident shows just how quickly things can go wrong and how crucial it is to have skilled professionals handling the situation. That's not the most shocking one. Princess Juliana International Airport is known for planes flying extremely low over the beach before landing. Tourists gather there just to experience the thrill of watching aircraft pass overhead. On September 7, 2025, a Boeing 737 was making that iconic approach after a routine flight. Everything looked normal at first. The plane descended smoothly, aligned with the runway, and prepared for touchdown. A passenger inside the aircraft decided to record the landing, expecting a smooth and memorable moment. But just as the wheels made contact with the runway, something went terribly wrong. The right landing gear collapsed almost immediately upon impact. The plane tilted sharply to one side, and the right engine scraped against the runway surface. Sparks flew, and smoke began to appear, creating a frightening scene both inside and outside the aircraft. For a few seconds, it looked like the situation could escalate into a fire, or even worse. Emergency crews responded quickly. They rushed to the scene and covered the aircraft in foam as a precaution to prevent any fire from starting. Inside the cabin, passengers had to remain calm as the crew prepared for evacuation. After several tense minutes, the evacuation began, and everyone made their way out safely. Only one minor injury was reported, which is remarkable considering how serious the situation looked. Investigators later discovered that a critical component in the landing gear system had failed. What makes this even more surprising is that the landing itself was not particularly hard. It was a normal touchdown. The failure was due to a structural issue that could not have been easily detected beforehand. This shows how even routine operations can sometimes be disrupted by unexpected mechanical problems. Sometimes, the danger in aviation does not come from mechanical failure, but from simple human error. On February 18, 2024, a regional jet was preparing for departure. The crew believed they were in the correct position on the runway, but they had actually started from the wrong intersection. This might sound like a small mistake, but in aviation, even small errors can have big consequences. Because of this incorrect position, the available runway length was significantly reduced. The aircraft needed more distance to take off safely, but the pilots decided to continue. As the plane accelerated, it became clear that something was not right. The aircraft struggled to gain enough speed and lift. When it finally left the ground, it had already sustained damage. There was a hole in part of the aircraft, and fuel was leaking. Despite this, the pilots managed to keep control. They climbed to a safe altitude and began circling the airport. This gave them time to burn off fuel and prepare for a safe landing. After nearly an hour in the air, the aircraft returned to the runway. Emergency crews were ready and waiting. The landing was successful, and everyone on board walked away without injuries. However, the aircraft itself was badly damaged and was never used again. This incident highlights the importance of clear communication and careful attention to detail during every phase of flight. Now imagine being on a runway, accelerating for takeoff, and suddenly realizing another aircraft is coming straight toward you. That is exactly what nearly happened at a small airport in Colorado. This airport did not have a control tower, which meant pilots had to rely on radio communication to coordinate their movements. On that day, one aircraft was preparing for takeoff while another was approaching to land on the same runway. The pilots of the departing aircraft misunderstood the situation. They believed the incoming plane was behind them, not in front. As they accelerated down the runway, everything seemed normal at first. But then, the first officer noticed something alarming on the display. Another aircraft was directly ahead, closing in fast. There was no time to hesitate. The pilots reacted instantly. They aborted the takeoff and pulled the aircraft up just in time to avoid a collision. It was an incredibly close call. Both aircraft managed to avoid disaster, but the situation could have ended very differently. This moment shows how critical situational awareness is in aviation and how quickly decisions must be made. Helicopters bring a different kind of challenge. They are versatile and can land in places airplanes cannot, but they are also sensitive to certain types of mechanical failure. During an event in California, a helicopter was preparing to land in a public area where people had gathered to watch. The pilot was experienced and known for performing impressive maneuvers. Everything seemed under control as the helicopter descended. But at about 50 feet above the ground, a key component in the tail rotor system failed. Without the tail rotor functioning properly, the helicopter began to spin uncontrollably. The pilot tried to regain control, but there was very little time to react. The helicopter crashed into a nearby structure, creating a shocking scene. People rushed to help immediately. Emergency responders arrived quickly, and survivors were pulled from the wreckage. Amazingly, everyone survived, though several people were injured. Investigators later found that small parts in the tail rotor system had broken, leading to the failure. It is a powerful reminder that even tiny components can play a critical role in flight safety. One of the most serious incidents involved a regional jet attempting to land at a busy airport. The flight had already been delayed, and the situation on the ground was complicated. Another aircraft had stopped on the runway, and emergency vehicles were moving around. In a sequence of events that unfolded very quickly, a fire truck was cleared to cross the runway at the same time the jet was cleared to land. The mistake was realized almost immediately, but there was no time to correct it. The aircraft collided with the fire truck, resulting in a devastating crash. This incident highlights the importance of coordination and communication in busy airport environments. Even a small misunderstanding can have serious consequences when multiple operations are happening at once. Again, there was a time when a rescue mission almost turned into a disaster. A helicopter was performing a rescue operation over the ocean. The crew had successfully lifted a person out of the water and were preparing to move away from the area. However, there were high-voltage power lines directly in their path. The pilot did not see them in time. In a split-second decision, the crew chose to cut the rescue cable, dropping the people back into the water to avoid a collision. It was a shocking decision, but it likely saved the helicopter and everyone on board. The people who were dropped survived and were able to reach safety. This moment shows just how quick thinking and decisive action can make all the difference. Bird strikes are another challenge in aviation. In one incident, a commercial flight encountered a large flock of birds during landing. The impact caused serious damage to the engines, leaving the aircraft with limited power. The pilots attempted to manage the situation, but it became increasingly difficult. The aircraft was unable to slow down properly and eventually crashed into a barrier. It was a tragic event that shows how unpredictable nature can be and how it can affect even the most advanced machines. Here is a moment that feels almost unreal. During an air show, a fighter jet was performing a slow maneuver at low altitude. The crowd watched as the jet maintained a high angle, showing off its capabilities. Then suddenly, one of the engines failed. At such a low altitude and speed, there was almost no room for recovery. The pilot made a split-second decision to eject. Moments later, the jet crashed and exploded. The pilot survived, though with injuries, and went through a long recovery. There's so much risk involved in high-performance flying and the importance of safety systems. Finally, let's talk about a large cargo aircraft that experienced an unusual failure. Shortly after takeoff, the crew noticed that the landing gear would not retract. They followed procedures and prepared to return to the airport. As they circled to reduce weight, part of the landing gear broke off completely. When the aircraft landed, the detached section bounced along the runway. It was such a dramatic sight, but the plane came to a stop safely. No one was injured, and the situation was handled professionally. It was a rare event that shows how even large and complex systems can fail in unexpected ways. Aviation is one of the safest forms of travel, but these moments remind us that it is also incredibly complex. Every flight depends on careful planning, precise execution, and constant communication. When something goes wrong, it can escalate quickly. But thanks to training, technology, and human skill, many of these situations still end with lives saved. If these unbelievable moments kept you watching, make sure you like this video and subscribe for more content like this. Let me know in the comments which moment shocked you the most, because honestly, some of these are hard to forget.